Eyes are the most
precious gift
bestowed to us by the Almighty. It is indeed very difficult for us to imagine a day remaining blindfolded. It is nothing but the virtual darkness, and among all the organs, perhaps the one which is most important and helpful to enjoy our lives. I have the pleasure in introducing Mr. Jaswant Mehta,
an eminent architect
and a consulting engineer, having master's degree in civil engineering from the USA. He is a recipient of gold medal
from Institute of Valuers.
Apart from his professional practice, he has also deep and abiding passion in prevention and cure of blindness, including eye banking and eye donation, where he has actively associated for more than 40 years. He is the founder member and ex-president of Eye Bank Association of India and also chairman, advisory board and managing trustee of Eye Bank Coordination and Research Center in Mumbai, popularly known as EBCRC, which is among the leading eye banks in the country and till date have provided more than 11,000 viable corneas for transplant for corneal blind people. Several editions of his book Eye Donation and Eye Banking in India have been published in English and other regional language. We are in conversation with Mr. Jaswant Mehta, who has always led from the front with the spirit of never giving up, a torchbearer and a humanitarian, working for the noble cause of eradicating corneal blindness and making India a hub for corneal transplants and eye donation. Welcome, sir. Before coming upon our today's topic of discussion, Mr. Mehta, can you explain us in brief about eye donation and corneal transplant?
When we talk of eye donation, it is mainly the retrieval of corneas after the death. While in earlier time we used to remove the whole eyeball, the present trend is now to retrieve only the cornea from the whole eyeball. Cornea is the outermost transparent layer of the eye, and the light enters the eye through the cornea just like the lens of the camera. Now, if due to any accidental injury or any serious infection in the eye, the cornea gets damaged and it becomes opaque and the light cannot enter the eye. Thus, even if the inside of the eye is intact, say including retina, etc., the person will not have any vision and he will be blind. Unlike other organs such as liver, kidney, heart, etc., which cannot be retrieved after the death, the endothelium cell in the cornea remains live up to 6 hours after the death, and if retrieved during this period, it is viable for the transplant.
Can you give us some idea about corneal opacity and number of corneal transplants taking place in our country?
It is estimated that there are about 8 to 9 million blind people in the country. Now, apart from corneal opacity, the other major causes of blindness are cataract, glaucoma, retina detachment, etc. Now, the number of people who have lost vision due to corneal opacity are estimated to be about 10% of the total blind. So, this will work out to about 7 to 8 lakhs. Now, if we want to eradicate corneal blindness within a reasonable time frame of say 10 years, we need to perform at least 100,000 corneal transplants a year. As against this, prior to pandemic, which had affected the eye donation activity a great deal, on an average we are performing about 23 to 25,000 corneal transplants a year. Now, to give you some example about other countries, USA, which is about 25 to 30% of our total population, they are performing on an average 50,000 corneal transplants a year.
Coming to our today's topic of discussion, which is favorable legislation for eye donation and corneal transplant, Mr. Mehta, can you elaborate on how this will facilitate the process of eradicating corneal blindness at the required pace?
To begin with, we must understand and recognize that basic parameters of eye donation and corneal transplant are vastly different as compared to other organs. Now, as I have mentioned to you earlier, all these other organs, liver, kidney and heart, cannot be retrieved after the death, whereas cornea are retrieved after the death up to 6 hours after the death. Secondly, the blood group between the donor and donee has to match for successful transplant of other organs, whereas this is not at all necessary in case of corneal transplant. Thirdly, remove heart, liver or kidney from the donor is a full-fledged surgery, whereas to retrieval of cornea is a much simpler process, and even a trained technician with a few weeks training can easily perform this, and it doesn't require any medical degree. Fourthly, there have been lot of stories of scams and scandal in case of other organs, whereas this is not the case in case of cornea because they are retrieved after the death. And fifthly, in case of medical legal cases where postmortem is required to be performed, the retrieval of cornea doesn't affect the postmortem findings and it doesn't even disfigure the face of the disease, whereas this is not at all possible in case of other organs. Now, to exploit these favorable points as regards the corneal transplant, unfortunately our lawmakers have never failed to take a note of this, and this has seriously affected our progress.
To support this, can you give us some comparative statistics about the impact of favorable legislation between India and other countries?
We started eye donation activity in mid-50s. Now, considering the span of 67 years, our progress has been really slow, looking to the statistics. Now, the countries which have separated cornea from other organs and have a favorable legislation, the progress has been much faster. To give you some comparative statistics, between 1961 and 71, in a total period of 10 years, USA had only performed 20,000 corneal transplants. From mid-70s onwards, most of the states there passed the favorable legislation and the impact was very obvious. The number of eye donations, which were a mere 6,000, touched a figure of 36,000 in 1988. And today, apart from performing 50,000 corneal transplants and eradicating corneal blindness, the USA is in a position to send corneas to several other countries where there is an acute need. Last year, that is just prior to the pandemic, they had sent 20,000 good quality viable corneas to other countries where there has been acute shortage.
Presently, we have Transplant of All Human Organs Act, known as THOTA, which covers transplant of all human organs, including cornea. Mr. Mehta, can you share some more insights on this act?
When in 1994, THOTA was being enacted, we had even prepared a model corneal grafting act, separating cornea from other organs and submitted it to the parliament. But unfortunately, this was never paid any due attention. All along, by having cornea clubbed with other organs, it has really hampered our progress. Till 2012, it was mandatory to have a registered medical practitioner only to enucleate cornea. This was a major obstacle because in case of large number of home deaths where cornea was to be retrieved, it was a very difficult exercise to have a medical practitioner who will spare 2 to 3 hours from the active practice to go to the home of the disease to retrieve the cornea. After all our persistent efforts, in 2012, THOTA was amended and it permitted the trained technician to enucleate the cornea. And for this, we are grateful to late Sri Desiraju, then Health Secretary, Government of India, who took lot of pains. Now, except for this, the cornea is still clubbed with other organs and we have no provision for required request and presumed consent. These two provisions have helped several countries to achieve a much faster progress. In case of required request, as per the provision, it is mandatory to request for eye donation in case of every death. And it has been found that if the request is made, even with little motivation, in at least 10% of the cases, the relatives, the next of the kin doesn't mind permitting the eye donation. Now in Bombay alone, there are 70,000 to 80,000 deaths taking place every year. Even if we are able to retrieve 10% corneas out of this, it will come to 7,000 to 8,000 as against our present number of 1,500 to 2,000 eye donations every year. Now, as far as provision of presumed consent is concerned, it permits removal of cornea unless there is a pre-recorded objection in all medical legal cases where post-mortem is to be performed. In Bombay alone, we have more than 7,000 post-mortems performed every year. Even if we are able to retrieve 30 to 40% corneas out of this, the number will be 3 to 4,000, and this will be good quality corneas as compared to the corneas retrieved from the old age patients, as most of them are from younger age group. With both these provisions, the USA and several other countries have progressed much faster. In fact, from the information I have gathered, in USA, in some of the states, these provisions are so strictly enforced that if they are not complied with, There is even a stringent provision of suspending of the license of the hospital.
So, Mr. Mehta, before summing up, we would like to know the future line of action.
Well, for and on behalf of Eye Bank Association of India, all along we have been representing to the Health Ministry and Law Ministry to have a separate, favorable, proactive legislation for corneal transplant and eye donation. We have even written to our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi in this regard, and we hope sooner it is enacted, better it is in the interest of the country, as it will not only help us to eradicate corneal blindness in the soonest possible time, but will also make India a world leader by having surplus corneas which could be sent to other countries to help other countries where there is an acute need, such as Bangladesh, Malaysia, and several other African countries where there is a huge long list of corneally blind patients waiting to get a good quality cornea to get back their vision.
Padma Shri Dr. Gulapalli Rao is the founder chair of LV Prasad Eye Institute, which is among the premier eye institutes in India. He is the recipient of several national and international awards. He has received 5 honorary doctorates from Australia, UK, and India. He is also the founder member and former president of the Eye Bank Association of India.
Corneal problems constitute a leading cause of blindness in our country. While prevention is the most desirable way, once the problem happens and the cornea becomes opaque, corneal transplantation is the only way to restore sight. For this to occur, we need a healthy donor corneal tissue. Donor corneal tissue of good quality is made available only by the creation of a vibrant corneal eye banking system. One of the major requirements for this is favorable legislation. This will enable the procurement of large number of donor corneas that will then enable corneal transplantation across our country. Mr. Jaswant Mehta has been a pioneer in the efforts to get this legislation from our parliament and the various state governments. His efforts are indeed laudable. The final outcome, I'm sure, will be a successful one that will then make India a leader in the field of eye banking and corneal transplantation in the world.
Dr. Nishita Agarwala is a consultant eye surgeon at Hinduja Hospital in Mumbai and the honorary medical director in the Eye Bank Coordination and Research Center located at Mumbai.
As 2 eye surgeons involved with the eye bank and as corneal surgeons, we agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Jaswant Mehta that there is little doubt that the needs of our corneal blind are not being fully met. Many of them would benefit hugely with a corneal graft, and we could then help them regain sight.
Dr. Quresh Maskati is former president of the All India Ophthalmological Society and the Cornea Society of India. He is an advisor and trustee of EBCRC, one of the largest eye banks in the country.
There is a need to sensitize the population and increase the numbers of corneal donation exponentially. We reiterate that we must delink the corneal donation laws from those of other tissues because the requirements are totally different. Therefore, progressive laws need to be initiated like the required request and the presumed consent laws which are available in other countries, progressive countries. This will really help the movement.
Well, eye surgery in the last few decades has been evolving, and there is a specialization in the study of different parts of the eye now possible. For most, it is difficult to be a master of many, but there are situations when an eye surgeon who may not necessarily be specialty trained in corneal diseases has to step in and operate to save vision. Therefore, strict compartmentalization of who can and can't perform corneal surgery may need to be reassessed.
This is especially true since all other super specialty eye surgeries, such as complex glaucoma surgeries or vitreoretinal surgeries, they don't need any separate registration. And even corneal grafting surgery does not need any separate registration in advanced countries like the USA. So corneal surgeons or corneal transplant surgeries or centers don't need special licenses or registrations anywhere else except in our country. This is putting a dampener on the movement of corneal donation and corneal grafting surgery.
It is indeed important to separate cornea from other organs. Let us hope a favorable proactive legislation which will be soon enacted by the Government of India to eradicate corneal blindness and make India a world leader in eye donation and corneal transplant, as emphasized by Mr. Jaswant Mehta.